the Congress-led UPA government. You're now a part of the Narendra Modi-led present-day government. How do you see the different styles of functioning? And do you think that the style of governance is what leads us to this track on transformation?
So first, thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to be on the platform of Republic TV. To your point, I don't know, this is a joke that's going around my family and my friends today, that whenever the next wave of COVID comes, I sort of herald it in because I'm the first guy to get it. But having said that, I would say that irrespective of it being in its endemic stage and whatever people say, one needs to be careful. It's better avoided rather than go through the process. I was just listening to our two former speakers, Jiten Singh ji as well as Admiral Verma. India has had a very long history of a robust economy. There was a time 500 years ago when we contributed 25% of world GDP. And I believe समय का एक चक्र होता है और उस विधि के विधान में और उस चक्र में हर देश अपना सफर तय करता है. And I think we've come full circle and the time is not too far in our journey from our current Amrit Kal to our Shatabdi Kal, 75th year to 100 year, when India will rise again and be a contributor of 25% to the world economy. Point one. Point two, we heard about science and technology. We heard about our maritime strength, and to our interviewer in that session, he talked about Akbar. But he forgot about the great Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj, who manned the whole western flank of our seaways. He was the one who ensured that invaders would not come into our country from the seaside, whether it's the Portuguese, the Jiji, across that flank. And India, as Admiral said, over the last 1,000 years, has been the labyrinth of infrastructure. If you look at our sea path, all the way from Africa till Europe, trade was done through the sea route in India. If you look at our road infrastructure, all the way back 500 years, when the GT road had been built in India. In Vajpayeeji's time, we built the north-south quadrilateral. Today, we are building highways across the length and breadth of India. We are building such highways on which Air Force jets can land. That's the level of technology that India has reached today. In the last 9 years, we had 75,000 kilometers of highways in 13-14. We today have 150,000 kilometers of highways across the length and breadth of our country. And that strength has translated into civil aviation. India is no stranger to civil aviation. Air India started its routes before independence in India. And I'm not talking about cities like Delhi and Bombay, and in those days, the center of trade and economy was Calcutta. I'm not talking about Chennai and Hyderabad. Air India would fly to Indore. Air India would fly to Gwalior in 1942, before independence. So this has been a strength of India which has been forgotten in this journey for the last 40, 50 years, being revived by Prime Minister Modi as we walk this path to our Amrit Kal and from our Amrit Kal to our Shatabdi Kal. To your question, I've been a student of economics. I was a banker in my past life with my friend, senior colleague Uday Kotak ji sitting here. We used to at times spar for many mandates. There was a Goldman Sachs Kotak relationship and there was Morgan Stanley. And let me tell you, that professionalism was lacking in the political sphere in terms of governance. The capability, expertise, and the attention to detail, oft English adage, the devil lies in the details. That insistence has been there with Prime Minister Modi. And now, having worked with him for the last year and a half, 2 years, the way he looks at PERT charts, the way he looks at deadlines, the way he looks at execution capability, and his constant refrain that India has had multiple governments that have announced multiple schemes. We do not want to announce any more schemes. We want to make sure that the schemes that we have announced attain 100% saturation across the length and breadth of our country. And so he pushes each one of us. Where are you on that path of 100% saturation? Where are you on that path in providing capable service to our people through government schemes? And that's the fillip that civil aviation has gone through in the last 9 years. If you truly ask me, give me one word of the change of civil aviation in the last 9 years. The one word that has happened in India in civil aviation is the democratization of civil aviation. नागर विमानन का लोकतांत्रिकरण ये 9 साल में हुआ है. What was earlier seen as an elitist service, a service for a few, Prime Minister Modi has democratized that with Ude Desh Ka Aam Nagrik, the people that we heard about, the aspirations that were imprisoned in glass bottles. Those aspirations today, no pun intended, are actually soaring high. When people, through a government-subsidized program, can fly by air as opposed to going by train or by road. That's the fulcrum and the change and the delta that we have seen in the last 9 years.
Yeah. No, speaking about...
And let me just add one more data point to buttress my argument. 2013-14, we had 60 million travelers by air in our country. Today, we have 140 million travelers by air in our country. 2 times. But that's not the end of it. If I look at my Sahbagi, which is the railways, which is also a department which is very close to my heart for very obvious reasons. The railways today transports by first AC and second AC, which is the only thing that I can compare civil aviation with, because per force an airplane is air conditioned. Roughly about 185 million travelers in India. We transport 144 million travelers in India today. The change in the last 9 years. But the magic lies in the CAGR, the compounded annual growth rate. Civil aviation is going through a CAGR of 10.3% in our country on a compounded basis. Railways at 5.6%. So today I am putting on the table that the day is not far that more people will travel by civil aviation within the next 5 to 7 years in this country than, and I'm classifying this, than by first AC and second AC train in our country.
But Mr. Scindia, when you speak of this...
That's the transformation. When you look at the transformation from 400 planes in 13-14 to 700 planes today, 75% growth. When you look at the number of airports in our country, India built 74 airports in 75 years of our independence. In 9 years, Prime Minister Modi has built 74 additional airports, heliports and waterports. We've doubled it to 148. But our ambition does not stop there. And I commit to you, in the next 5 years, we will take that number to upwards of 200 in our country. That's the connectivity that we're looking at.
I can relate.
Sorry, a long answer to a short one.
Mr. Scindia, but I think people have been wanting to hear you. So I think a large member of our audiences also fly the busy routes. Arnab sitting here does the Mumbai-Delhi route very often. But there's...
Kolkata also.
And many a times, the Mumbai-Kolkata route as well. And there are many times that the air fares, there's a surge of more than 100%. The MP from Ladakh, from your party, very, very glaringly spoke about the prices, the air prices, the fare prices for the Leh-Ladakh route. So do you think there is, at any point, you're thinking of regulating these fares? That answer would directly benefit the people sitting in the audiences.
So it's kind of ironic that you're putting this question to me. The whole call from 1.3 billion people in our country today is regulate less. Minimum government, maximum governance. It was my father who in 1993 deregulated civil aviation. And today you're putting a proposition to me that you would prefer that I re-regulate civil aviation. This is a market-driven sector, number one. Number two, I'd like to explain a very valid question that you've raised. We are a cyclical industry. This industry is a seasonal industry that has its highs and its lows. You have a high season starting in Dasera, festive season in October, which takes you until early Jan. Then you have a low season that comes in from Jan till about April, May, when schools close and we take our children on holidays. And then you have high season until monsoon, and then monsoon is the real low season in India. And then you start off again post-monsoon into festive season. And this cyclicality brings with it the demand push that comes from consumers. And this is not alien only to India. This is the status of our industry worldwide.
Absolutely.
One. Two, just look at how difficult the environment is in which the civil aviation sector worldwide has operated. For the last 2 years in COVID, our planes were sitting on the ground. There was not a single traveler. But still, India is the only country in the world where a single airline has not shut shop. All of them are still flying. And I must bow my heads to my airlines who have done a stellar job through civil aviation. Rini mentioned the whole issue of Operation Ganga. There is no country in the world that flew 90 sorties of civil and Air Force flights into Romania, into Budapest, into Hungary, into Czechoslovakia, all with one purpose: to get our citizens back safe. And I must bow my head to all those civilian and Air Force pilots that did that without any purpose in mind but to make sure that we bring our kids back safe. So our civil aviation sector has gone through a very turbulent time and has done a yeoman's job. Combine that with their economics. What is the civil aviation sector's economics? 50% of the cost structure of civil aviation is dependent on one factor: air turbine fuel. And ATF prices have gone from 53,000 rupees a kiloliter pre-COVID in 2019 to 1,07,000 rupees a kiloliter today. So 50% of your cost structure has doubled. And in an environment in which all airlines are making losses, basically 50% of your losses have doubled. And even in that environment, they're continuing their service. So I certainly believe we have a practice called RBDs in civil aviation, reservation bucket designators. If you book your ticket well in advance, whether it's a late ticket or a Kolkata ticket or otherwise, if you book it 2 weeks or 3 weeks in advance, you'll get it at floor prices. The raison d'etre of the argument that is coming up is for people like you and me who book our tickets in the last day or the last 2 days or last 3 days. Yes, the fares will go through the roof at that point of time, but that is the practice worldwide. It's not alone to India as well. Right. But I am very confident as our fleet size grows. Air India has put in a order of 470 planes, the largest order not in Indian civil aviation history, but global civil aviation history. That's where we have reached on the global stage today. 250 planes from Airbus, 220 planes from Boeing, 470 aircraft. Indigo has put in another order. As these planes keep coming in and that supply grows, I am looking at our current civil aviation sector traffic of 144 million domestic, 60 million international, total 200 million, doubling to 400 million in the next 5 years. That's the demand that we're looking at.
So, Mr. Scindia.
And I do believe, just to add on that, the Laffer curve example in telecom. There was a time in telecom when I came back from undergrad at Harvard, when I became a banker, we did not have a single one of these boxes in our country. And each one of these boxes cost over a lakh of rupees, and it used to cost 16 bucks a minute in terms of operational cost for a consumer. Today, you get this box at 4,000 rupees a box, and voice is free.
Correct.
So economies of scale argument have also manifested themselves in civil aviation and certainly will do so in the days to come.
Fantastic figures. You seem like you're a man on a mission. Transformation in the civil aviation sector. Now, I want to go back a few years. We've seen scams during the previous government, especially in the aviation sector, and we've covered those, right? Deals were signed, for example, the Air India allegedly made to sign deals, carrier losses in 2008, 2009. Air India is today privatized. You spoke of all the transformation that has happened. What stopped the previous government from doing what you are doing today?
See, I'm not going to be like the Congress party that drives with its eyes in the rearview mirror. I am looking forward and upward. And my job is to make sure that I serve my people. And it is my commitment that this sector will reach heights unknown to India in the next 5 to 10 years. Please understand, it's important now we have reached an inflection point in India in civil aviation. We've reached that scale. And therefore, civil aviation is not only about planes, it's not only about airports. Civil aviation is about a full ecosystem, and that ecosystem is about ground handling, it's about cargo, it's about MROs, it's about FTOs. You need enough flying training organizations to train your pilots, you need enough MROs to be able to service your engines. That whole ecosystem today is ripe for supplanting in India. And that is happening as we speak. Safran is putting in a $150 million investment into India to manufacture close to 1,000 engines per year over the next 3 to 4 years. That's never been thought of before in India.
Yeah.
Airbus has tied up with Tata's, a 200 C295 manufacturing facility in Vadodara for 20,000 crores. Could we ever imagine that Airbus will set up a manufacturing facility in India? Today, Apache fuselages, the Apache helicopters that we look at in the US Air Force and so on and so forth. Where are those fuselages made? Very few of us know. But they're all made in Hyderabad by a Tata joint venture with Boeing. The C-130J Hercules aircraft that you see, which went in Operation Ganga to get our kids back. The appendages of those aircraft, where are they made? They're made in India, in Hyderabad. Atmanirbhar Bharat, made in India. Ladies and gentlemen, it's happening in civil aviation in India due to Prime Minister Modi. So my view is in the windscreen looking forward and upward. Yes, there have been many scams in the past. There's no denying that. Air India has been the victim of many scams. The reason why Air India was in the state that it was, 600 crores worth of losses per month on an ongoing basis, 7,200 crores per year, drained not of Government of India's exchequer, but your money and our money, is because of the scams that took place. The wrong aircraft orders that were put in place, the twisting of rules that happened. Yes, all of that happened. But that is our past. We have to look at today, and we have to look at the future of India. And the future of India, ladies and gentlemen, in the civil aviation sector is very bright indeed. I commit to you that.
Okay, I just want to take a follow-up question on that. Mr. Scindia, certain airlines have had to ground about 50 planes or more due to disruption of jet engines. You spoke about jet engines. The maintenance by American company Pratt & Whitney. And yet, we are told that India is buying or importing engines from them. So is India planning to reduce the dependence on other countries of flight paths, make more indigenous paths here?
So yes, I'm not going to get into company-specific details because my job as Minister of Civil Aviation is not to start interfering between a contract between yourself and her.
Yes.
And I'm sure there is because both of you work with Republic TV. But having said that, my job is to ensure that the civil aviation sector moves fast in India. There are issues with engine manufacturers. I'm not going to deny that. Close to about if I'm not wrong, about 50 to 55 planes out of our fleet of 700 today
Yes.
are grounded
Yes.
because of engine issues. But there are supply chain issues, and there are supply chain issues across the world. So one, there may be contractual issues. Second, there are supply chain issues. We are working with airlines as well as engine companies to make sure that those issues get resolved as soon as possible.
Yeah.
But having said that, going forward, I'm looking at a healthy supply book of aircraft into India, whether it is Akasa, whether it is Indigo, whether it is SpiceJet, whether it is Air India, and even a point that you've not raised, are regional aircrafts. Many of us are not aware, but the Udan Yojana, Ude Desh Ke Aam Nagrik, today has transported 1.17 crore people in our country that possibly could never dream of getting onto an aircraft. It has lent itself to 220,000 flights being flown in this country. And most importantly, it has created 3 new startups in regional airlines. There have been 3, India One Air, Star Air, and one other airline that have been born out of the Udan scheme. So my concentration is not only on big airports. My concentration is not only on 737s and Airbuses and A350s and Dreamliners. My concentration equally is on the last mile connectivity. Because when you provide that hub and spoke model in civil aviation, that's how you create robust demand. So my connectivity to tier 2 cities, tier 3 cities, which is why I've been looking at connecting ALGs, advanced landing grounds on our border with China in Arunachal Pradesh, and flying our Dornier 228s to those areas, whether it's Tezu or other small airports on our border areas. That creation of demand from regional connectivity will also boost civil aviation traffic going forward. And as far as engine orders are concerned and engine supply is concerned, I'm confident it will iron itself out. Yes, Pratt & Whitney is going through many supply chain issues, and we have tried to impress upon them that our sector cannot be stymied because of their supply chain issues.
Yeah.
Mr. Scindia, the theme for our summit today is time of transformation, यानी बदलाव का समय. आपको लगता है कि भारतीय राजनीति में भी ये बदलाव का समय है, खासकर उन पार्टियों के लिए जो परिवारवाद से ग्रसित हैं? उन्हें समझना होगा कि शायद राजनीति बदल रही है, वरना वो आप जैसे नेता खो देंगे.
मैं मानता हूं कि इस देश में प्रधानमंत्री जी के नेतृत्व में एक बहुत बड़ा परिवर्तन विचारधारा, लोगों की अपेक्षाएं, लोगों की आशाएं, लोगों की अभिलाषाएं में हुई है. जिस सरकारी संस्था, सरकारी तंत्र को, चाहे वो नेता लोग हों जिनको हम जिंदगी भर कोसते आते हैं, और अच्छे को भी एक ही काले धब्बे के साथ अच्छों को भी हम लोग पूरी तरह से लपेट देते हैं, या हमारी ब्यूरोक्रेसी हो. प्रधानमंत्री जी ने दिखा दिया है 9 साल के कार्यकाल में कि अगर एक दृढ़ इच्छा शक्ति हो, एक संकल्प हो और एक कुछ करके दिखाने की क्षमता हो, तो हमारे देश के लोगों के लिए सेवा भाव के साथ और प्रधान सेवक के रूप में परिवर्तन लाकर वो सेवा की सोच और विचारधारा हम जनता के समक्ष ला सकते हैं, और उसके आधार पर जनता की विचारधारा नेता और ब्यूरोक्रेसी के प्रति भी परिवर्तन ला सकती है. अब टुडेज इंडियाज गवर्नमेंट इज इन अ गवर्नमेंट ऑफ अकाउंटेबिलिटी, अ गवर्नमेंट ऑफ गवर्नेंस एंड अ गवर्नमेंट ऑफ मेकिंग श्योर वी सर्व आवर पीपल.
वो आपने कहा, बताया नहीं कि वो जो पार्टियां जिनका नुकसान हुआ है आपके जाने से, वहां पर अब थोड़ा नुकसान और होता दिख रहा है हमें आने वाले समय में.
मैं मानता हूं कि ऊपर वाले ने हमको सीमित समय इस पृथ्वी पर दिया है, और सीमित समय इस पृथ्वी पर दिया है अच्छा करने के लिए. 2 तरीके के लोग होते हैं इस दुनिया में. एक लोग होते हैं जो अपनी लकीर लंबी खींचना चाहते हैं, और दूसरे तरीके के लोग हैं जो अपनी लकीर लंबी ना खींचना चाहें, पर दूसरों को कैंकड़े की तरह उनके पांव पकड़ के नीचे लाने की कोशिश करते हैं. और मैं उस दल और उस नेता के साथ मैं मानता हूं कि मेरा सौभाग्य है कि कार्य करने का मौका मिल रहा है, जिनकी मंशा देश के अंदर नहीं लेकिन विश्व पटल पर भारत की लकीर लंबी खींचने की है.
Since you're on the political point, I'm going to ask him last political question. Do you miss some of your former colleagues in the Congress? For example, what's happening in Rajasthan. All the young Turks seem to be fed up in the Congress party.
So I'd just like to interrupt you. You know, I've heard this concept of young Turks. All those young Turks are now graying Turks. All of us. You know, I have a son who's 27 years old. Right? So that's point number one. Point number two, this is not a Congress party problem. If you do a case study, and I'm sure, you know, Uday will join me in that. If you look at the change that has happened, for example, on India's economic landscape in the last 20 years. You look at 1990 to where we are today, the last 30 years. You look at the top companies in India today. I can guarantee you that probably 70 to 80% of them were not in existence in the 90s. Why has that change come about? That change has come about because if you're not able to attract talent, you're not able to retain talent. And most importantly, and I underline this, please, you're not able to respect talent, then that talent is not going to stay with you. An institution, whether you're a company, whether you're a political party, certainly is about the ideology of that institution. But that's the skeleton of the institution. The heart of that institution, whether you're a company, a political party, any institution in the world, is its people. And those people, those are the heartthrob of that institution. If you're not able to retain, attract, and most importantly, respect.
So, Mr. Scindia, let me switch to the other side of the spectrum. Do you think that setting a goal is a prerequisite to this transformation that we are part of as a country? We've seen it in COVID times with being importers of PPE to then manufacturing them and then actually exporting them to other countries. Do you think that setting of a goal is a prerequisite and that vision that comes from the top? You are a young minister in the Modi government. How do you see that vision being passed on by the Prime Minister to you?
So when we were in business school, one of our key strategy lessons that we were taught two things. There's a concept called BHAG that you're taught at business school. That in life, you must always have a big, hairy, audacious goal. Okay? It's part of all strategy books and business school books, right? This is the first time that a government in India under the leadership of Prime Minister Modi has had big, audacious goals for every sector. From drinking water, to Ujjwala gas connection to every Mahila, to Pradhan Mantri Kisan Samman Nidhi. Look at the revolution in digitalization that's happened in India. Creation of 50 crore bank accounts for our people. And there used to be a former leader who said that only 15% of what the center gives reaches the people. Today I can say with full confidence that when Prime Minister Modi presses a button in Delhi and releases 16,000 crore under Pradhan Mantri Kisan Samman Nidhi, 16,000 crore of rupees reaches those farmers who it's meant for. And that transformation has not happened in any country in the world. Today, countries across the world, from United States to Europe, are doing case studies of India's digitalization success. And what is that about? That is about empowering our people. It is when our people are empowered that we can create unicorns in our country, we can create new paradigms in our country. And that's the transformation that we have seen. So yes, you have to set a vision. But along with that vision, you've got to set daily, monthly milestones to be able to achieve that vision. And then the accountability has to be there. And the accountability, for example, within government, is not from bureaucracy alone. I believe the minister has to be as equally accountable. And when you work together as a team, with your team within your ministry, you have to make sure that you're equal partners in that game. It should not be a minister and a bureaucratic relationship. It should be a partnership relationship. Because when you build that partnership relationship, you put in place the energy into every single person to perform. And that only comes when you're as accountable to your team as your team is accountable to you.
Yeah. So refreshing to hear from you, Mr. Scindia. We feel you should interact more with the media. And thank you once again for taking the time out and being with us today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much.